Welcome back to another Aramaic Bible study. These Bible studies are intended for students of Aramaic and Semitic languages more generally, as well as those interested in what the Aramaic traditions have to say about Scripture, whether they be Jewish or Christian traditions. Today we're continuing with our previous look at Abram's rescue of Lot found in Genesis 14. We'll be looking at verses 14 and 15 today. So first, I'm going to go ahead and read the Hebrew. וישמע אברהם כי נשבע אחיו וירק את חניכיו ולידי ביתו 18,300 וירדוף עד דן. Now Abram heard that his brother had been taken captive. He armed his trained men, both of his household, 318, and he pursued until Dan. And now Targum Onkelos. ושמע אברהם, הרי אשתפי אחוי וזרז יד עולמוהי, ילידי ביתי 318 ורדף עד דן. Now Abram heard that his brother was taken captive. He armed his trained youth, who were born of his household, 318, and he pursued them until Dan. Targum Neophiti. ושמע אברהם ארום אשתפי לוט בר אחוי, וזעין יד علموه تربوت بيتي 310 أرداف بطريهون عاد قيزاريون. Now Abram heard that Lot, the son of his brother, was taken captive. He armed his trained youth who were reared up in his household, 310, and he pursued them until Kaisarion. So a couple differences here, number changes, of course, but you also see this idea of being raised up, which is interesting. And that's another word for being cultivated. So we put reared up here is probably better in a human context. And instead of referring to the city as Dan, it's referring to them as Kaisarion. Targum Jonathan. Uchad Shma Avram Arum Eshtvi Achui. وزين ياد عولي موي تخانيك لقرابة مر بييني بيتي ولاتسفو لمخلخا إيمي وفخر منهن يت العسر بار نمرود دحوى مثيل بجفورتي كي خلخون 318 ورداف عدان. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his youth, trained for war, reared up of his household. But they were not willing to go with him. So he chose from them Eleazar, son of Nimrod, who had reached in might as all the 318, and he pursued until Dan. So we get some extra information on Jonathan here that we didn't have in the previous editions, namely, who he chose, Eleazar, son of Nimrod. And you get not just the idea of the youth, but youth who were specifically trained for war. Right? Trained for kraba. You also get a contraction for 18. Instead of tmon asar, you have tmonasar, with the ayin completely tliktha, or taken out, dropped. Now the Syriac Peshitta. Ushma Avram deshtvi barahui. Uzain Elohi yalde baite. Dathmone watmonat asar uradaf botharhun adamol dan. Now Abram heard that the son of his brother was taken captive. He armed his trained youth, who were born of his household, 318, and he pursued them until Dan. Well, moving on to verse 15, versed in the Hebrew, V'yichalech aleihem leilehu, v'avadav v'yakem v'yirdefen ad chova asher mishmol l'dadmasek. And he split off against them at night, he and his servants, and smote them, and he pursued them as far as Choba, which is north of Damascus. Now Targum Onkelos, وإتفلق عليهن لليهو وابدوهي خونون وردافنون عاد خوا لمتصفونا لدمشق. And he split off against them at night, he and his servants, and he attacked them. He pursued them until Choba, which is north of Damascus. Targum Neophiti. ופلق عليهم ليله وشلتنو قتال ويتهون ورداف يتهون عاد خوا دي من صفون لدمشق. Pretty much the same, and he split off against them at night. He and his power, you could say force, maybe. Usually chayil is used for force or power in that sense, but think of sultan, right? Shaltanohi, his power. And he killed them وقتال يتهون. He pursued them until Choba. Little difference between smiting and killing, but here the verb for kill is used. And now Targum Jonathan. With Pelegel Hun Lilia, Beorcha, Falgutha Archan Aim Malachaya, Ufalgutha Etstiniya, Lemimche Bukhraya, Waqam Ihu, Avdohi, Umchinun Urdafinun Ma, Dishta'ar min Hun Ad, Tidkar Choba, Da'atid Lemehwe, Badan, Demitzfona, Ledarmasik. And he split off from them at night on the road. A part were to war with the kings, and a part were to lie in wait to smite the firstborn of Egypt. As he rose, he and his servants struck them and pursued them which remained of them unto the memorial of Choba, which in the future would be in Dan to the north of Damascus. Now the Syriac Peshitta, with Vlech Aleihun Belilia, hu Avdohi, Umachu Enun, Ardfu Enun, Adamo Lachova, the men Simola, the Daramsuk. I read that in the Eastern accent, but that's okay. And he split off against them at night, he and his servants, and he attacked them and pursued them until Choba, which is to the north of Damascus. So a couple fun observations of some of the differences here in this, in these versions. You get this word nephew used in the Hebrew, in Targum Onkelos, in Targum Jonathan, but Targums Neophiti and the Syriac Peshitta say bar ahwe, the son of his brother. So the Hebrew, the Onkelos and Jonathan all read his brother, his brother, his brother, versus the son of his brother. Now the Semitic languages have so many vocabulary words for very specific family relations, but a general word for anybody related to you is what we would call brother. So here, and this is why it's the case in the Hebrew, brother is used to describe a nephew. Brother doesn't literally mean your fratello, right? It doesn't mean you're the son of your mother, right? So it could be the son of a common mother or whatever. And I know this gets thrown in there in a lot of conversations where people get upset if the word brother means anything other than the son of one's mother and father. But in the Semitic languages, you could refer to someone who's not the son of your mother and father as your brother, who may be a relation of some kind. In fact, when you pluralize brother or you add the na ending, you end up getting the pronoun for we or us, ahna. So it's this idea of some type of relationship of someone other than yourself, right? Call it a relation. Next is the word for north, which is pretty interesting. In Hebrew, mishmol, and in Syriac, min smolo, literally means from its left, from its left. And then in the other versions, you have mitzvona, min tzafon, mitzifuna, right? Basically all from Tzafon. So Tzafon is a mountain in Syria, and that's north of the Holy Land, of course. So it's to the left if you're facing east. So think about that. To the left means north, and then the direction of that mountain is to the left of the Holy Land if you're facing east. Why might we face east if we're starting to describe our directions? Well, that's where the sun rises. And so you have this idea of the left side or the north side being represented or calibrated according to the direction of the sun. So north is the left side when you see the sun rising. Kind of cool idea. Well, that's it for this little piece here. I broke it up into two studies so it wouldn't be excessively long, but I think there are little nuggets from all four verses, part 1 and 2, that we looked over that are worth investigation. If you found the video interesting, useful, or helpful to you, go ahead and do the algorithmic duties, like, share, subscribe it, share it with your community, whether it's a language community, whether it's a spiritual church, synagogue study group, whatever, if there's any benefit to this, it's worth sharing. Please go ahead and do so and let me know what you all think about it. I do these videos in part to raise awareness of the importance of Aramaic. It's one of those languages that, gets thrown into popular, film, TV, as sort of a quirky or semi-spooky spiritual language that a lot of people don't know much about, but we should. It's just as important to the roots of Western civilization as Greek and Latin. Greek and Latin, of course, are the defining languages of the European countries, but really a lot of that knowledge starts in the Middle East, in the ancient Near East, in Mesopotamia, and the languages there would be Akkadian and Aramaic. And so I want us to elevate Aramaic, especially for people who like scripture and things like this. You can read both Old and New Testaments in Aramaic dialects, and they're a lot of fun. They reveal a lot of insight. So go ahead and elevate Aramaic. And if you have suggestions for further studies, go ahead and place them in the comments below. Thank you again for watching.